Mexican people say ugly Americans do not come to Mexico. Good morning and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. Imagine moving to Italy as a foreigner and then telling Italians to quit playing Italian music on the Italian beaches or get sued. Or what about moving to Greece and telling the Greeks to stop playing Greek music in the Greek restaurants or get sued? Well, this is what's happening right now in Mexico. Americans are telling the Mexicans to stop playing music in Mexican restaurants and on the beaches. So here it is, right in front of you, and is where the term ugly Americans comes in, and this time it is very ugly. I hope everyone knows there is a difference between ugly Americans and the regular nice Americans. Labeling every American ugly would not be correct. Every culture has ugly people, and most Americans are respectful when they move abroad. But that being said, there are some really ugly ones, that's for sure. Here's what's happening in Puerto Vallarta as we speak. Local people in Puerto Vallarta are wondering why ugly Americans move to Puerto Vallarta if they don't like Mexican music, or at least tolerate Mexican music. They're wondering why Americans would move right smack dab in the middle of the touristy nightlife section of Puerto Vallarta. This section has popular restaurants, bars, and nightclubs with musical talents and mariachi bands. The restaurant is only open until 10 p.m. every night. It's not like the music is keeping anyone up in the middle of the night. And finally, they're wondering, and so are we, why Americans would take legal action against a Mexican restaurant that's been around for 35 years and is very popular with the Mexicans and tourists alike. Americans need to learn something, and that is if you move to another culture, we must respect that culture. We shouldn't move to another country only to change the culture or transform it into something we think it should be or something we want it to be. What happened to live and let live?
Like you see the gringo neighborhood in Cuenca, what developed after a while is all the gringos showed up and you saw these signs and these laws being passed. They were anti-noise laws that were passed in the gringo neighborhoods. And the sign said, if you hear any noise past this hour, whatever, call 911. And this just sounds just like America. You say, I want my freedom, and what your neighbor wants is freedom. And so they play loud music, and freedom with responsibility is personal liberty. And the difference is just a very small difference. We both have freedom, but I take responsibility. So that means even though my neighbors, they will play loud music, past 10 p.m., and take your pick, Latin country, but this case was Ecuador. And it's their freedom. I'm not going to encroach on their freedom. And yes, I am trespassed by the noise, but I tolerate it. I put a headset on, I turn the show on or whatever, I put the headset on, shut the windows, and
Turn your fan on.
Do what I can to tolerate it. Because I know that in order for me to have liberty, I need to allow other people to have freedom. But when you go to the gringo neighborhood, they actually had laws passed. Call 911 if you hear noise. And, it just...
We've seen this happen in Ecuador, except for in Ecuador, the gringos were not just complaining about the Ecuadorian music, but they were also complaining about the fireworks that would go off randomly in the city. When we first moved to Ecuador, it was pretty cool. They'd light off fireworks whenever they felt like it. No one cared. It was part of the culture. Fireworks and music in the neighborhoods was normal, along with the barking dogs, car horns, and loud traffic. It's just something you adapt to. Fast forward to today, and noise ordinances have been put in force, telling people to be quiet or pay a hefty fine. This happened only after Cuenca got popular with the gringos. If Americans could sue the dogs for barking all night, they probably would. Ugly Americans move to every country. It's part of the live abroad sphere. The thing is, these folks didn't move abroad and then become ugly. They were already ugly before they moved. These types of people are uptight before they even go abroad, and unfortunately it causes rifts with all the people and institutions they interact with. We can't stop some people from being disrespectful towards other cultures. We can only mind ourselves and what we do. The travel, live, retire abroad world is not without its negative issues, and gentrification is one of them. So you see, it's not always just about price. We've talked about this many times before on this channel. We call it the gringo foreigner vicious cycle. It causes spikes in prices, it causes spikes in crime, and it also erodes the culture, causing contention with the people of the country they're moving to in droves. It basically changes the whole landscape of a particular city or town. When the advent of the internet and a whole cadre of unabashed promotion during the last 12 years luring the general public to the retire abroad, move abroad table, it's no surprise that more and more squares are being pushed into round holes. Hopefully, the judge will see this complaint for what it is and put everything into perspective, such as the restaurant has been in the same neighborhood now for 35 years. Locals and tourists love it. No one has ever complained before, and they are putting some of the local singers out of business. That's their livelihood. This same thing has happened in Mazatlan just recently. Here again, it was Americans that didn't want the music playing next to them while eating dinner. They complained to the city, asking the municipalities to stop playing music in the beach restaurants. The Americans lost the case. It looks like the precedent has been set, and will the judge use this case as a reference to the Gabby restaurant litigation? We hope so. We have to wait and see what happens. We have often shared on our blogs and vlogs that when you move to another culture, there are going to be cultural differences, and you have to be ready for those differences. You have to be ready for change because everything is different than where you came from. This is why expats end up leaving after only a few years. We also warn Americans before moving into a new home or apartment abroad to check out the neighborhood for the noise levels, barking dogs, parties at night. Drive by or walk by the neighborhood during the daytime and nighttime to observe what is the neighborhood like before you rent or buy. We need to know ourselves really well before moving abroad so we can move to those areas that are more appropriate to our likes and dislikes and needs and circumstances. I mean, if you don't like loud music, Latin America is not for you, okay? The Americans in this case did not do their due diligence before moving to one of the most touristic cities in Mexico, and in the nightlife sector to boot. We think this case will be a winner for the Mexican restaurant owner. We certainly hope so. Time will tell. Okay, so that's it for now. Have a great day. Bye-bye.